you can't really achieve enlightenment until you accept your like ability to like be the devil or something along those lines. I'm butchering that like crazy. But you have to accept the your capacity for nefariousness.
Yeah.
As well as your like capacity for like more edifying ways of
like
existing.
higher being, higher self.
Your quote is very relevant to that.
I was going to say Matt had said a very similar quote. I forget who he said it, but I really liked it. All trees that reach to heaven have their roots in hell.
So good.
And it completely just like
so good.
Like what's beautiful about that too is like, as I had like mentioned here and there, is like people can create like these like moral superiorities because they're constantly existing as their higher self. I'm evolved, I'm actualized, I'm better. But like really we all have our roots in hell. You know, we are not all none of us are existing just as like these higher like sinless beings, so to speak, right?
He who is without sin cast the first stone.
Right, yeah. Honestly, bars by Jesus, low key. Like he ate with that one, not gonna lie. Not gonna lie, I'll give him that.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Intellectual Podcast. We're just putting just a little dash of nuance to the polarizing conversations on the internet. I'm Jem.
And I'm Renee.
And we're your hosts for today, where we're actually going to finally answer the age-old question.
Yes.
What does it mean to be actualized?
Talk about it so much.
Yeah, self-actualization. What is it? How to achieve it? Why is it important? Why should you care? You shouldn't. That's the that's a takeaway that I've realized after actually researching what it was and what's it mean and all that great stuff.
Yeah, we definitely we realize now in hindsight how I would say we misused the term to like some degree.
A little bit. Taking a little out of context. I'm not gonna lie.
100%.
Or rather than misuse, I will say that the way we use it is extremely biased.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
We have an agenda I didn't realize that we had.
Until until we looked into it, we're like, oh.
So yeah, we have been utilizing it in this manner.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll clear out what that is. And if you want to be a self-actualized individual, we'll explain how to go about doing so.
Yeah, 100%.
Very chill. Very chill. But before that, let's talk about much more interesting happenings that are going on within the
pop
world.
Cultures and whatnot.
What is going on?
Yeah. I think the most relevant thing that I'm seeing in the ether at the moment is how much people are hating on Emma Chamberlain's podcast. Yeah.
Aww, what's wrong with her?
I feel like this is the first time that I've ever seen like so much like hate towards her from like her peers, because I feel like
peers like who?
Well, sorry, like peers in the sense of like the demographic that is
her age group.
Her age group, yeah.
Sure. How old is she?
Younger than me. I think early 20s, maybe. Yeah.
22, 23.
Actually, maybe she's the same age as me or like older. I would
Let's find out.
Yeah. Well, you find out. But yeah, so people are just really shitting on her podcast. Essentially, the reasoning for it being the lack of depth in the conversations that she's having on the podcast, and like her inability to kind of really dig deep on subjects that really have a lot of depth. But when you listen to her talk about it, it's very like surface level. So I saw this TikTok video where someone was like, when Emma Chamberlain, sorry, I'm laughing thinking of it. It's like the video is someone just like a little like sped up version of someone like getting up, putting on a person, like walking out of the door. But it's like Emma Chamberlain leaving the studio after having like an hour-long conversation about something that I talked about with my friends at 9 years old. And I was like, damn. Oh. I like, to be fair, I did listen.
So rough.
I know it really is. It really is tough. I did listen to her. One of her episodes where she talked about, or she tried to answer the question whether romantic love was an illusion. And it was clear to me that she was just going through a breakup.
Right. Right. The type of questions that come up when you're clearly going through something. Like, so who broke your heart, fam?
No, exactly.
Like, why are you sad?
100%.
Like, poor thing.
100%.
Who hurt you?
Oh, wait, did you figure out her age though?
She's 22.
She's 20. Okay. She is.
She's a relative baby.
Yeah.
I don't know why you guys are expecting in-depth profoundness from for all intents and purposes, a child.
Well, then it's like, I guess, funny as we sit here with a podcast, but like, then like, why have a podcast? Like, why? Like, people, like, it's also people, like, some people just shouldn't have podcasts. Like, why?
Fair.
You know, maybe she. It's not that
Fair.
she can't be having these discussions or shouldn't be having these discussions. So people are like, what is this? What is your podcast like doing? You know?
Whereas like maybe your take could have been easily and less aggressive or less what's the word? Less irritating if it was like just like a social media thing.
Yeah.
This is what I think about this, blah, 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 versus
Totally.
like sitting down and being serious and
Yeah.
having like a production when you're like talking about literally nothing for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to her podcast and see
listen
if there's
to it.
any credence to or any validity, I should say, to people's concerns.
I definitely say take a listen. I think it would be interesting. Or maybe she could just do her podcast about something else. Or maybe she should be having, like, maybe this is her way because she got famous so young of like having like these sorts of like discussions with the internet. And eventually she'll evolve and she'll grow and it'll be cool to see that evolution.
My take immediately just off the bat, knowing nothing, is that people are being way too hard on her.
People are being mean, for sure. People are being
Because,
mean.
man, I couldn't form really coherent, like, profound things at 22.
Yeah.
Or, like, the level of which I was doing so is just not the same as how it is now.
Yeah.
I wasn't connecting things as seamlessly.
Yeah.
I was exploring ideas and, like, just chatting with the universe. Throwing shit out there, see what's stuck.
Yeah.
Like, why are we crucifying this poor girl for
Yeah.
that? It's so sad.
And it's like relatively harmless stuff too, you know. She's just
Yeah.
contemplating love and
Right.
like life.
That was nothing.
Yeah.
She didn't have a completely revolutionary take on like a breakup. Sorry, crazy
Yeah.
people. Goodness.
No,
I
people
think
are.
the expectations are just way too high.
Yeah, 100%.
She's 22. Is she saying anything that a 22-year-old would be saying?
Yeah.
You know?
I
I
have
don't
no
know.
idea.
I don't
I
know.
have no
I'll have to actually, as a person who's listened to it, could you have formulated better ideas at 22? Keep it real.
Well, I'm trying to like take myself
Right.
back to that like time. Grant, I only listened to like one of her episodes. So what she was talking about like is romantic love, an illusion. I don't know. I'm not sure. I definitely want to start a podcast.
Sure.
I didn't feel like entitled to like share my like perspective. I was very like self-aware that like a lot of things were not like fully formulated.
But then again, she shares every other aspect of her life.
Right. So why
And people
not?
eat it-
Why not her
eat
inner
that up.
thoughts? Yeah. No, this is true. This is true.
Maybe it's more about her and less about y'all. And y'all
Well,
just
I-
took it personally.
Yeah, people really did take it personally. That's she's someone who's super, super famous and people want them to
More.
be, yeah, exactly. If you're going to do this, do it well, I guess. I don't know. But,
I want to see all y'all's podcasts. Or maybe y'all know the difference and know that you wouldn't be able to do a podcast, which is why you don't.
yeah.
That's also like, you know, the people that understand what it is but know they can't do it, but they still have the ability to critique whether or not it's done well.
Yeah.
There's again some validity in that, perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah. But I mean, maybe she's on her path to self-actualization.
Oh my god, maybe.
and we are
we'll
just witnessing
understand
the journey.
exactly what that is by the end of this episode.
Right, exactly.
You know what I find super intriguing about this entire conversation about actualization and how people are always whining about how complicated humans are. I don't think humans are that complicated. I think we're complex. And here's the difference. The reason why we are multifaceted is because multiple things can be true about people simultaneously.
Yeah.
So It is true to say that we are completely influenced by the machinations and chemicals and hormones that operate in our brains. One could argue that it's a very instinctual way of interacting with the world around us.
Yeah.
That's true. At the same time, we also are very responsive to our environment. And every experience that we have within a certain context provides a new way of viewing and interacting with the world around us. And both of those two things seem like they contradict each other.
Yeah.
But they're both true.
Yeah.
Like, we're affected by our environment, and we also exist instinctually. I find that very interesting.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about
Actualization. I do think, and I know, I don't know if this is where you want to start, of just like what kind of where this idea of self-actualization even like came from. And this is something that is new information, like for the both of us, kind of where this idea, like the inception of that came from. And that also like kind of helps, bring it all together. Like, right. Well, just in the way of like the way that we were thinking about it when discussing it in regards to like relationships and readiness for relationships and whatnot. And just kind of how like incomplete that statement is when we say like you need to be essentially like you need to be self-actualized to be ready for a relationship. There's just like a very like incomplete. There's so many holes in that statement, and kind of the inception of this idea of self-actualization is a good way to like start of where like, okay, this is where the holes were, and this is what like creates a more like full picture of what it is.
So like a critique of ourselves.
Oh, I'm critiquing us so hardcore right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm prepared now I'm actually prepared for it.
Yeah.
Is it taken out of context? I don't know. Because maybe you don't have to be self-actualized to be in a relationship, but it 100% definitely helps relationships be a thing.
But I think what the lack of picture, and that's what I was saying, like, I want you to go into like the like inception of it,
sure.
Because self-actualization is not like a thing that you get to and hard stop, you know, it's a continuation, you know, it's not. And the way that we spoke about it and like have like spoken about it on this podcast has been very much like you become self-actualized, then you go into a relationship. Right. But those two things, it's not like one ends and one begins. It's an ever evolving thing. All like right. You know.
Let's go back to the beginning then.
Exactly.
It comes from the very almost people like kind of invalidate this era of psychology. It's like the Freudian type of psychology. So you had Sigmund Freud saying all these things about the id, superego, and the ego. Yeah. And all the like the negative associations and why people like exhibit certain behavioral traits, right? Then in response to that, there was another guy who coined actualization. I forget his name, but it was popularized by a psychologist called Maslow. I don't know his first name. Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. If you've ever taken a psychology class, you're very familiar with that triangle. It looks like a food pyramid. And on the bottom, it has a certain characteristic. And at the very little top, little tiny triangle at the top, self-actualization. And the subheading for that is fulfilling your potential for all intents and purposes. But he never meant it to be like a goal that people reach. He meant it to be a reference to and response to the psychological issues that people had, what to look for when you're trying to qualify what psychological health looks like. So when you meet all your needs, the bottom of the pyramid is physical. So you have food, water, shelter, the most basic human rights, people argue, right? Then you have, it goes physical, I want to say safety, which is like freedom from harm or safety from harm. Then you have interactions with people. And then you have esteem, your self-esteem, your sense of self, your self-worth, understanding your ideas in relation to other people. And at the top, you have self-actualization, which is fulfilling your potential. And he argued that people that are psychologically healthy exist in such a way that they have a fascination with life and they're able to reach the full extent of what they are meant to reach. That's like how it started. And then somewhere along the line, it stopped being a list of traits and a process by which people observe and process the world. And it kind of got linked to this, I would argue, Eastern idea of enlightenment and the hyper productive mindfulness wave that came. Like, I don't know when these things happened, but I know like the conversation kind of got intertwined, and self-actualization became like the highest pinnacle a person could reach in the process of like self-awareness, basically.
Yeah.
Which, in all intents and purposes, is not as correct as
it was initially intended.
Yeah, because who am I? Who are we to claim what is a person's true potential?
Right.
If a person wants to and is really good at just subsisting outside of the context of success in which we define it.
Right.
And they want to just like chill in a tent in the woods and they're living life and enjoying themselves and doing what they're meant to do. Who's to say that that in and of itself isn't actualization?
Right.
It's can only be qualified and defined by the individual.
100%. Yeah. And that was something that I had to kind of, even with myself, reflect back on and just like reassess the ways in which like I'm using this word, or I have a perspective and I'm using like this like term as a way to like push my own like perspective or my own agenda on like something. This is how you have to be. And for us in like the context of this podcast, this is what has to happen for you to be ready for a relationship to work, and it comes from a place of like superiority, where it's like, who's to say what is actualized for the individual, except for the individual to say, which is the hard part for me, who loves to give my opinion on things.
But like it's not like actualization doesn't look like something.
Totally.
And I like to I realize that it's not necessarily the achievement of a certain idea, but it's like the process by which you reach that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you never really reach that. But the process by which you go about it is like the actualization process.
Right.
So like the self-actualized are the people that are aware of the process and are taking the process, or like taking the road towards actualization.
Walking the path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it does, according to Maslow, there is a certain framework in which this process looks, and which is why I think it's so easy for it to be connected to like this idea of like hyperproductivity and like the inner work and like just like becoming the best version of yourself, right? Which, you know, like it's not a wrong thing to desire per se.
Totally.
But we do have to acknowledge that that's not how it started.
Yeah.
So here's what he noted as the traits of the self-actualized, and he said they live authentically. So that was trait number 1. There's 13 of them. Are there 13 of them? Yeah, there's 13 of them. Wow. They live authentically. They accept everything as a happening. Like nothing is either good or necessarily bad. It's just an occurrence, which relates very strongly to Taoism from Eastern spirituality, which is why I say they kind of got connected somewhere. They think very critically. They question things. They live spontaneously, so they're not bound by the traits and expectations of what people think that they should be. They're autonomous, which means that they're like disciplined and self-motivating, and they are working towards a greater purpose. They enjoy solitude, or they accept solitude while also maintaining and keeping close connections with other people. They have an innate sense of gratitude and appreciation for the little things. They stop and smell the roses. They enthrall themselves in the ocean's currents. They appreciate the beauty that is a sunset, right?
Yeah.
They're very lighthearted. They don't take themselves too seriously, which again, we just immediately just not apply to me specifically. I can't take myself very seriously. And their experiences are like peaked. They exist presently in the moment, to which their experiences are the best things that they can experience at a given time. They have a oneness within themselves and other people in the universe, and an innate compassion for all living things.
Love that.
How pleasant. So when you take into account like all these things, while Maslow never wanted it to be a goal to be achieved, a person will look at this list and they'll be like, well, I'm those things, so I'm actualized, right? And they'll run with that very far.
Yeah, I mean, I do like find it interesting how, yeah, like the trend of like inner work and self work and all that sorts of thing has like been portrayed in these, what you had said, of like positive like things. They kind of exist in these two extremes of, if you do your morning walks every morning and do breath work and what else?
Drink your water.
Drink water, which is please drink your water.
Yeah, drink water.
I could always drink more water.
It's never a bad thing. Per se.
Exactly. And if you do this, like you will like have like it'll help you live the life that you want and all these sorts of things. You'll be a better human. Like the other side of the extreme of like, wake up at 4 a.m. and I read a book at 2 times speed.
And I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm working out, do my 13-mile run, and then come back and I optimize every second of the day and do all that craziness.
It's like those two things. Like there's some good things you can take out of that, but it essentially becomes like these band-aids that people put on where the actual inner work may or may not be being done, because these things as supplemental boosters to whatever inner work that you are trying to do, whatever growth or an evolution that you are trying to achieve as a person, they are incredibly useful, of course, but doing just those things without the introspection required, it becomes just like I said, like a Band-Aid you slap on and you forget about.
You're going through the motions.
You're just going through the
under
motions.
the guise of reaching certain level of like sophistication, profoundness, or enlightenment, and you're missing the entire point of what it actually means to go through that process.
Yeah.
Which is to say, like, I think we can both agree that we've gone through this process, whether consciously or inadvertently, right?
I'm in this process.
Well, there you go.
And that's what I'm saying. Like and it's not to say it's like I am constantly thinking about being a better person or how I can be more ideal, but it is one of those things of you go through moments in life where, at least for me, I can intuitively understand when it's like this season of my life of how I'm operating is coming to an end, and I need to step up to grow to that next level. And like then you exist in that for a bit of time. At least that's how I think of it. And like you exist in that for a bit of time, and then and then when you need to level up again, or just like not even level up, just kind of like reflect, do the things, grow as a person. I'm glad I'm not the same person I was at 18 years old. And I hope I'm not the same person I am now at 30, 35. I hope that I continue to grow and evolve. And so, as I was like stating earlier, it's a continuous like process. It's a mindset. It's a way of living, so to speak.
It's a way of living.
Yeah.
That, again, is characterized by reaching the fullness of your potential.
Yeah.
But that can only be defined by the individual.
100%.
What does it mean for you to exist in the fullness of what you are?
Yeah.
What that means for me and ye is one thing, but what that means for you, not very different, but not necessarily the same.
Yeah.
I think our friendship is solidified on the fact that we both identify with a very similar process towards actualization. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's like the end all be all, even though that's how we always frame it within our conversations. And another frame that people like to look at it, and this is where it gets kind of lost in translation, is like the conversation around consciousness and raising like awareness from like your base. You know the like I forget what it's called.
Chakras?
But it's like called something like all 8 of those things are like it's called something, and I forget, like Chandellini type. I don't remember. Anyways, but like when you're operating in your base levels of consciousness, you're extremely like reactionary, you're impulsive, you're instinctual, versus like how you're supposed to act like with the unity and the fullness of love and like just be super in tuned is like responsive and like you're manifesting all these like positive things.
Yeah.
So the language that we use to describe these things also shape the way that it's thought about and the way that we go about it, which again, not necessarily a bad thing, but it does become like there's a very fine line between like these positive aspects of actualization and then like preaching to a person about how they're supposed to exist.
Right.
You're supposed to like read all these books, educate yourself, understand all these things, grow, know like what you stand for and what you represent, which like I see all these things. I'm like, yes, why wouldn't you want that? But that's like actualization for me.
Yeah.
That's how a person like I would reach my full potential. Not everybody is meant to take over the world. Not that I'm trying to take over the world.
Yeah.
But it's like we judge it based off like the highest levels of achievement a person can have.
Yeah.
Where it's like a person can be completely content and completely satisfied, just like being a little farmer, his own little garden, his own little space, and chilling. And he can be the most profound and self-actualized individual.
Yeah.
And you'll never know it because we're over here chasing this productive idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that, let's start at level 1. What does it mean to be your true and most authentic self?
Yes. I know all. No, but I think like something that you had mentioned of Maslow, the psychologist, had even touched on. It really does start with identifying your authenticity of who you are, like truly as a person, and kind of like going into the discovery of that. So, you know, stripping away like upbringing and like ways in which you have been told to live and who you want to be, where you want to go. And really like then, well, how do we begin, like start there? Like where does that start? And that is with just like intention, truly being intentional in that like introspection of like what those things are. So asking yourself questions. How do you become a better person? And that can then evolve into like, how do I become like the ideal person? And then as we say, then it becomes, how do I become a whole person?
I really like that.
Yeah.
Like, how do I become better, ideal, and then forget better and ideal because those aren't even important. They're going straight to like, how do I become whole? What am I missing?
Right.
How do I like experience this fully, which is the actual goal?
Yeah. But like then those questions of how do I become better and ideal are important because it requires, there is self-critique that needs to occur in order for you to kind of evolve and grow. Right. So in the question of how do I become better, you are asking yourself and forcing yourself to reflect upon the ways in which you are like your shortcomings, your flaws, your setbacks, etc. And I mean, identifying whether those are things that you want to change. And even then in that evolution, you probably will come to like some conclusion of like, that is an aspect of myself. But it's the initial like self-critique that is necessary.
You have to start somewhere. And the easiest place to start is with your limitations because, you know, your limitations aren't my limitations, and what I consider limitations won't be what you consider limitations. But it's important to start framing things within that context so you can reach a certain level of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can really decide whether or not what you are believing, the ideas that you're filtering and synthesizing for yourself, are actually things that you believe, right? Casting off all those like institutions and all the society and friendships and parents and everything that you're taught and told to believe for a certain reason, for a certain, I don't know, I'm not going to say agenda, but like just like the environment around you is influencing you constantly. And most people don't question whether or not the things that they're told are things that they actually believe and things that they actually think.
Right.
And the moment you do, you realize that a lot of the things that you are being told, you don't even identify with. You just grip onto it because it's something you've been told for who knows how long.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily like bad per se, but it's limiting because you can't know with conviction like what you believe. You can't stand on anything. Well, and if you do stand on something, like, is this your opinion or is this someone else's opinion? Is that important to you? It's important to me.
Yeah, no, definitely the what do you identify with and why is a huge one for sure. Even for me in my preparation for this episode, I talked to my all-wise boyfriend, Matthew, which really wish he could be here to talk about it, but neither here nor there. He, gave his like insight on this because this is his bread and butter, really, like this whole topic of inner work and self-actualization and individuation and all this stuff. But in that like identification, right, he had pointed out to me like the 3 layers that you kind of have to assess of self, essentially. Sure. Like when you're doing this like inner work. And the first one that he said was persona, which is like the mask that you wear, the you that you present to the outside world. The second one being ego, which is everything that you tell yourself you are, but may not necessarily be what you actually are. And also kind of what you had just pointed out, like what you identify with, these moralities, these ethics, these belief systems and ideologies that you attach yourself to, and whether that is really truly of yourself or is something that you were learned to like identify with. And then the last part being your higher self, essentially your actual self, who you truly are. And that being kind of the last layer that you're trying to really access and heighten, essentially. But what is required to get to that like actual self, higher self, is going through the persona and the ego and identifying those things. And then what is required in that? That's like a lot of vulnerability with yourself, a lot of like hard truths and like, as I said, self-critique that you're having to do to get to that aspect. Like what is then truly like authentic to me? What is truly authentic to you? Right. And no, like I'm asking. Oh, to me? Renee specifically. In that, how about an example? Why not? You want an example? Yeah. Oh, the example I gave. Whichever you want, whatever works for you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Right, 100%. Yeah, I think that is like the hard part of this, is that when you are in this discovery, you're going to attach on to things. You're going to throw out personas that, maybe your parents or ideologies that you grew up on, let's say like Christianity, and then you're going to attach yourself to like atheism because it's like the complete opposite of that. And then through that like evolution, like you may realize, well, I'm not atheist either. I'm somewhere in the middle, and like I don't really believe in this either. Right, like in that being like a beautiful thing in of itself. What's an example? I think like a funny one that I have is like growing up, I did not smoke weed. Right. I was a non-weed smoker, and I was very judgmental of people who smoked weed and honestly did the fun drugs in general. The fun drugs. Wait. I remember like, then going into college, and really like the thing that I told myself and what I told other people was that, I'm a singer. I like don't want to ruin my vocal cords.
Smoke
Like
is so bad for your voice. You don't
exactly. Like it's so horrible for you. And like, I don't want to ruin and I also, me like a young one, I was like a budding little intellectual and, didn't want to ruin my brain.
Right.
And like, I just, and validity in that I was 18 years old. I was still underdeveloped. Yeah, but those are the things I told myself, and ways in which I was like, I'm above this. I can't do that.
Right.
And then I went to college and I joined an a cappella group and saw all you little hoes just smoking weed.
Smoking away.
Like crazy.
Freaking chimney stacks over here like it's a thing to do. Puff, puff,
no,
what do you mean?
literally. And then it was it was the moment where it forced me to like question my belief system, just like, and as small as that is, right? But it was still a belief system, right? This thing that I held on to, like gripped so tightly, as a means to make myself feel like superior or better in some ways, and above others. But really in actuality, it was, like the fear of the unknown, and you can attribute that to like I grew up very Christian, so very afraid of drugs and weed and all this sorts of things. But yeah, it was this thing that I held on to so aggressively, that then through like introspection or just through like then witnessing it as well, I came to realize that that was something that I had to like let go of, right?
Because it didn't. It wasn't a representation of like what you believed or like how you saw yourself at the time.
Right.
As you discovered other things, like, why am I gripping onto this so aggressively?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It was a product of what I've been told my whole life, right? And granted, if I then came back to that conclusion that I believe that weed is bad and not good for it, like that would be one thing. Then I can claim that identity or that I like that belief as my own, truly. But at that time, that wasn't the case.
Which I think brings up a very interesting sub point to this, that everything that you're taught doesn't necessarily have to be wrong. Like we're not saying like cast out everything that you've learned, cast out all the information that you have and like start over from scratch. It's like, it's not necessarily about that. If you want to do that, I mean, good luck, first of all. Second of all, there is a beauty in appreciating and respecting the structures that maintain your development until a certain point. You don't necessarily have to cast them out unless they're completely unaligned with what you're believing currently, but to question them, like go through those beliefs. Don't just take them for granted at the same time, right? Don't dismiss them out of turn, but also just like don't accept them without
questioning,
really processing
thought.
them. Yeah, it's like the weed thing, very, very, very minor.
Yeah,
very like
very low stakes.
Yeah, low stake type of beliefs, but like. Those are the ideas that you have to like just like question a little bit. Just like, is this something that makes sense? I'm in a group of singers and they're smoking weed. Clearly, these people sing fine and they're smoking, and it's not like that detrimental to their vocal ability.
Yeah.
Now there's a contradiction. Now you explore that. So like, why do I feel so strongly about weed specifically? You go through it, and like you said, you can come back and be like, well, fuck. Weed still sucks.
Yeah.
But now it's weed still sucks because you feel that it sucks versus you've been told to say no to drugs this entire time. You craft this like weird narrative around why you want to do something, and then you like look down on other people because they do it, trying to make yourself seem better in comparison when it's like, it's not that deep. It's not that crazy. And a lot of people, myself included, use this like better or inner work or like the position that you arrive to project that onto people that are struggling or like are less aware or whatever they are, use that like as a stepping stone to be like, well, at least I'm not that crazy.
Right.
At least I'm not that dumb. At least I'm not that unaware. At least I'm not doing this annoying thing.
Right. It's used to place judgment.
Where it's like there is at the end of or in the middle of this process, you realize that good and bad. Oh man, this is gonna be taken so out of context. But good and bad is relative.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, what's good for one could be detrimental for the other. Very relevant for men and women. Like men and women exists in many contexts as opposites. What may be good for women might not necessarily be good for men. And to judge another person because of what they're doing when it's good for them is nonsensical if you're not going to have a conversation with them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the like term, like what good and bad starts to become like a moot point to some degree, especially in not even necessarily like good and bad in terms of actions, but good and bad in terms of like self, right? Because I think also like in that process of like doing like inner work, there are aspects of yourself that you reject or push aside or stuff down because you see it as something that is like bad or, not good for society, or you're going to be judged on or whatnot. And,
or it is a trait that you have that society does judge.
Yeah, no, exactly. And kind of in like the integration of that, because this is kind of just going into like that shadow work and like integrating like your darker side essentially.
Right.
And not really seeing it and therefore seeing yourself as like inherently good or bad, but just understanding self, of knowing your limitations, knowing the extent in which you can go. And having that understanding, like that deep understanding of yourself, is, I think, super important to have in life.
I agree. And then not judging the aspect of what you, or like not necessarily qualifying the aspect that you possess or the trait that you have, because whether it's good or bad, it's still 100% you. So if you're going to like critique it in a way where it's like, this is bad, I can't be this way, I have to change it. Like that becomes very unproductive very quickly, because if it's a thing that you can't change, then it's just something that you have to accept. For I mean, this is not necessarily an inner thing, but like the height situation for men, right? Like you can demonize and think you're not good enough because you're not a certain height, but like you can't change that.
Yeah.
So now you're going to be thinking you're less than, thinking you're not good enough, limiting your own awareness, your self-perception, whatever, because of something that you can't change. Like it's okay.
Yeah. And
learning how to accept those things is very important.
And how much more like powerful does it feel to know how far you can go, essentially, and
control that.
Yeah, and having the self-control not to, and the understanding of why you will not or should not.
And one could argue you can only have the self-control once you are aware of your
big
ability.
Big time.
How can you stop yourself from doing something you don't know that you're even capable of doing?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is interesting though, going back to like the weed example of, I guess I want to like stress how important those like little moments of seemingly insignificant like growths that you kind of can go through. So for me, was the weed being the example, but how that truly was a catalyst for so many things for me. So obviously like the theme of a lot of my self-work and growth that I have experienced in my early 20s and young adult life is informed by like the religious like upbringing that I had. And so, yes, like weed, funnily, it's funny. It's like, oh, don't do drugs, whatever. But I was also really deeply informed by like the religious upbringing that I had. And then that kind of, in my questioning of my faith, kind of then it was, you know, I'm going to do this bad thing. I'm going to smoke weed. Right. Right. Exactly. I'm going to face that because
she's wilding out now.
Exactly. My mom would definitely think so.
I raised you better than that.
Right.
Did you?
But yeah, kind of then tackling that seemingly small thing, but it was a snowball effect of then just like of self-exploration and challenging myself in all these other ways. I mean, even for me, like a huge staple of like my like self-growth that I've experienced in my early 20s has a lot to do with sex and my perception of sex, of my own sexuality, as a person, as a woman, and really going to whatever extents I felt that I had to go to in order to understand myself in that way. And challenge, it initially started off as a challenge to my upbringing, to my childhood, of everything you're saying is wrong. Every Christianity, everything they have their opinions about.
Raging against the machine.
Yeah, raging against the machine, 100%. And that was so necessary for me to come to kind of a full circle moment. And I'm obviously personally not to nearly the extent that Christians are on their like viewpoints of sex, but I'm not so hardcore on the opposite end, right, as I was initially. But that was so necessary for me to take it to that other extreme in order to really like...
maybe what y'all were saying kind of made sense.
Sure, in some degree. Or like what I was saying earlier of like taking off the mask of like this persona that I was putting out to the world, good Christian girl who like followed the rules and did the things, stripped that and just I attached a completely different persona onto myself that eventually I realized was not of myself, right? It wasn't authentic to me, but that was also important to do in order for me to get to a place where I could find true authenticity. And even in that, it asked the question, how do you know? Right. And for me, like, this might be an annoying answer, but it was intuition. It was like knowing at what point that I was just like, okay, I'm good off that. That actually like, you know, is not something that I want to engage in, or the person that I want to be in this way. This is not the way that I want to live it. But I kind of had to live it in order to be like, okay, that's not it. Right. It's not in alignment. Right.
So there's this relationship between like self-reflection while you like exist and like you do and you explore and you act and you do things.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, after you're done doing things, you think about the things that have been done.
Yeah.
And you reflect and assess whether or not those things are in alignment with the type of person that you want to be. And like the mutability of what that is for the individual is so variable.
Yeah.
Right. You can be anything you want to be at a given time and completely change it. Like maybe that's not the authentic version of you when you're 18, but now at 24, that when you were 22 isn't the authentic version. So you have to like shift it.
Yeah.
Like become, and each shift and each iteration is moving you towards the truest sense of yourself.
Yeah.
Which is that process of shifting and iterations is the actualization process. Right.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Indeed.
Yeah. I kind of even, it's funny because in this conversation, I was really realizing just like how much of like shadow work, I guess, is what the term that people use and call it. But even at the time, like I didn't really know that that's like what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't like an intentional thing.
Right. Yeah, it really wasn't. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like, I personally have never used like the term shadow work for it, but it really is. I really
dislike that term.
But it really is.
I think I only dislike it because it's so overutilized.
It's used a lot, but it's like a quick and like easy way to like encapsulate what we're kind of like talking about in this instance, at least. But I think also just like another aspect of that, kind of going back to the vulnerability with self, the kind of de-identifying from what you deem as like good and bad about yourself, as a means to like access and find your like more authentic self, and just like engaging. This is how Matt put it, in like judgeless like objectivity, and just being like, you know, once again asking those questions of like, what do you need? What like are you missing? Just how do I feel? You know, very like basic questions, but can really be like hard to answer.
Especially in your 20s. I think there is a certain level of put togetherness that people are expecting, especially like once you're later 20s like me.
Yeah.
People expect you to have an identity and to like understand yourself like to the fullness of who you are. But even now I'm still like questioning and really reassessing and qualifying the beliefs that I have, and like making sure like, is this still something that resonates with me? Is this still something that I believe in?
Yeah.
And being willing to continue to do that. Once you have like a very, because I have very strong opinions.
Oh yeah.
And I have very established predilections about things, and I forget how strong those opinions are because I'm like, I'm so on the surface, so open to ideas, and I like let people say their things, and I'm like so curious as to why people are the way they are.
Totally.
But I'm very like steadfast in the things I believe, and then somebody will say something that really triggers me, and I'm like, wait, why am I having such a visceral reaction to this?
Right.
Why do I believe that so strongly? Is there any value in what they're saying to me? And then you go from there, and it's like a constant little cyclical process.
Yeah.
That functions all the time.
Yeah.
I do love that judgeless objectivity, though.
Yeah,
I think that's a beautiful sentiment. It
very good way
reminds
to put
me
it.
of Carl Jung, and I forget exactly. He has an entire series of books that are like 2,000 pages, and they're the most difficult reads of all time.
Yeah.
But
I had to read some Carl Jung in college.
He's now you want to talk about profound on a podcast. his podcast would be insane to the point I don't think anybody would ever understand what the freak he's talking about, because that man was a different type of genius.
Yeah.
A different type of genius. But he said something about like you can't really achieve enlightenment. He didn't use enlightenment, but I'm paraphrasing. You can't really achieve enlightenment until you accept your like ability to like be the devil or something along those lines. I'm butchering that like crazy. But you have to accept your capacity for nefariousness.
Yeah.
As well as your like capacity for like more edifying ways of
like
existing.
higher being, higher self.
Your quote is very relevant to that.
I was going to say Matt had said a very similar quote. I forget who he said it, but I really liked it. All trees that reach to heaven have their roots in hell.
So good.
And it completely
It's
just like
so good.
Like what's beautiful about that too is like, as I had like mentioned here and there, is like people can create like these like moral superiorities because they're constantly existing as their higher self. I'm evolved, I'm actualized, I'm better. But like really we all have our roots in hell. You know, we are not all none of us are existing just as like these higher like sinless beings, so to speak, right?
He who is without sin cast the first stone.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, bars by Jesus, low key. Like he ate with that one. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. I'll give him that.
That's so true.
But yeah. But it's like, if that is like the like a truth or the truth, right? That, you know, we all are both angels and devils. We all have like both, you know, the angel and the devil on the shoulder. We all have those aspects of self. then it's that much more important. In order to be your most authentic self, you have to recognize both.
And accept them both as well.
Right. And that was also something, that in my conversation with Matt, as I was prepping for this episode, that he had said of just like, it's not just about identifying, de-identifying and identifying with the aspects of yourself, but like acknowledging and accepting those aspects of yourself. And that's kind of like the next hardest part, right? Because then in the acknowledgement and the accepting, at least for me, it then is, it becomes maybe like a quiet or subtle or statement to the rest of the world or your peers or the people around you of, this authentic self that you are. And that can be a scary thing because
it's very
in that
isolating.
you can be, there's like a fear of rejection, fear of judgment by others. And that may occur. And that's kind of why someone pushes that stuff down in the first place, right?
Because you're trying to conform.
Exactly.
And to which case, conformity isn't necessarily a bad thing, but again, then another tenet for actualization is like enjoying solitude and understanding that this mindset, this progression is not the norm.
Yeah.
Most people do not question things. I realized that after I started questioning things, I realized like, wow, people just don't question things.
Yeah.
People don't even question things I tell them. I'm like, no, just take it. Like, question this stuff.
Right.
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That critical thinking is just... So it can be a very lonely road until you find like-minded individuals that are ready to do that. Also, you'll find that people like reach this desire to question at different points. So you could have done it at 18. Another person starts at 27.
Yeah.
And neither is necessarily incorrect.
Right.
But if you're 18, you're going to have to wait for the motherfucker to start questioning shit at 27 if you want to have those type of conversations with them, because they just won't get it.
Yeah, no.
Until they're ready to get it.
Yeah, no, that definitely can be true. It can be, it can be a lonely road because like you said, not a lot of people want to do this level of like inner work or self-work in the way that it is required, as we said at the beginning. And it's not required, right? To you could just go about life doing your thing. And that's totally fine. That is like the path that you want to take.
And the path that we're articulating is a shit ton of work.
Yeah.
And I feel like life doesn't lend itself to clarity in that capacity. Because if you start questioning everything, you stay questioning everything. Nothing feels like as solid as you want it to.
Yeah.
Until like way later. And that instability and uncertainty is not a fun place to exist at all.
This is very true.
I get why a person would
just rather...
You're like, you know what, things are okay being what they are.
I'll just continue to do my sound baths.
Exactly. I'm going to do my
Which are
sound
great.
bath.
I love sound baths.
I do remember, I need to try one of those one day. Those high frequency vibrations, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or like working out, doing crazy. I'm running 15 miles today.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. That feels more stable than sitting in a dark room questioning why you believe what you believe. Goodness, that's very rough.
Yeah. I mean, even then, like kind of relating this back to what we were saying earlier of like relationships and what this means for relationships and like answering the question, or I guess the statement that we had said before of like, do you need to be self-actualized in order to enter into a relationship? And I think where we got it wrong is that essentially, no, you don't. And granted, obviously you don't. People are getting into relationships all the time.
Right.
Like,
how ubiquitous is our relationships?
Right.
How many people do you know are actualized?
Yeah, exactly. And that also kind of going back to like some sort of like superiority that we were like speaking from is okay, well, like, yeah, like someone needing to be actualized in the ways that we kind of envisioned a person needed to be in order to like have like a healthy, productive relationship. And as we had also said, like as individuals, that looks very different. But also too, it's not like a, you know, process that just like ends and then you are your highest self and you may continue on in life just being at that highest level, right?
Ooh, hooray. You reached the peak.
Right.
Okay.
And if anything, like relationships are a huge catalyst for which we have stated on this podcast 100%, which is kind of funny thinking back now. Like the small contradictions in that, because relationships are like a huge catalyst for growth and for actualization. Like through your partner, through your relationship, you can evolve and grow, you know. You have to face certain aspects of yourself when being in a relationship, because at the end of the day, whether you like want it or not, relationships require the utmost amount of like honesty and vulnerability
and self-reflection.
And you can hold that back as much as possible, but then eventually that relationship will not work because you are not like presenting yourself as truly and authentically as like you really are, right? A person, you know, it's required for a relationship for that to be.
And maybe that's what we were trying to touch on. We just used the wrong terminology.
Yeah, but like it's also like, yeah, sure, that could have been what it was. I think there were like,
because like maybe you don't need to be actualized. You can't be actualized before you get in a relationship. But the more authentic you are with yourself and your partner, the more likely that relationship is going to be beneficial. And
but also in that your partner will force you, like the dynamic of a relationship. It's not even just about like I am willingly doing said thing. You will eventually be forced to be authentic and vulnerable. Like that is.
What do you mean by that?
Just,
like I
like
get it, but
it almost feels as if, I guess it's like kind of hard to explain to some degree, because I think what it is, like if there's some like aspect of yourself that you are not like revealing, let's say, you are like, and the other part, your partner is going to sense some like an alignment, some disconnect, like something in your behavior. Because your partner, like if you've been together long enough, they're going to be the closest. Yeah, they're in tune with your behaviors, your moods, like your just like ways of being, your mannerisms, all that sorts of stuff. They're going to pick up on these things. And so I almost see it as like when you get something stuck in like your skin, and like your body will eventually like push it out, even if you don't try and take it out. Yeah. I kind of see it as like that, like just like the nature of a relationship
is to bring out your true self to the surface.
Exactly.
That is a take. That's interesting. That's so interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it's like a beautiful thing, like a beautiful cycle where there's individual work that you do to kind of understand yourself to a degree. Then you may get into a relationship and then you discover like, oh, there's maybe more to this, or maybe I haven't been as honest with myself or with others, or I am not living to the potential that I actually could be. I've been holding myself back in all of these ways, and that's revealed in your relationship. And you know, your partner can be both like a force of like, I don't know, like questioning and like asking and forcing you to like reflect and answer, and also a like form of like support in that growth and like inner work and whatnot. And then you, as in the relationship, what that does is then like the relationship kind of becomes more actualized and grows, and then that benefits then that benefits individuals, and this is like whole cycle, a beautiful cycle.
I think so. It's so interesting. Well, actualization is a psychological concept, and it's a thing that can only be experienced by the individual.
Yeah.
The way that we're talking about it and the way that it's been talked about is very philosophical.
Oh, totally.
It's extremely philosophical. And You know, I have my own qualms about philosophy.
Yeah, which I learned earlier
Right,
today.
yeah.
I had no idea you didn't like philosophy.
I don't
That
like
is
philosophy
so
because
weird.
there's no end goal. It's conversations for conversation's sake, which I'm not opposed to.
There's no wrong answer.
But like, I want there to be right and wrong, which in itself is a philosophical dilemma.
Right,
Right?
100%. I was like, sounds like there's some inner work that you just kidding. So funny.
That's how I feel about that. But you're not wrong. We all have a little
We all have our things.
work to do. And
Yeah,
for me, it's
100%.
understanding why I freaking hate philosophy. But there's like this theorization that happens with it as we try to derive some sentiment of meaning or some aspect that I think takes away from the actualization process in and of itself.
Okay.
Because to talk about actualizing is to not actualize. You know what I mean? It's like grasping at your reflection in a pool.
I see.
Can't pick it up.
Yeah.
But the only way you can describe it is to philosophize about it. Because it's like this disambiguous concept that we
Totally.
have no real, like, it's not tangible
Right.
in any real way.
I agree.
It's comprised of experiencing and living life, and then at the end of it, you can assess in retrospect, did I reach my potential?
Yeah.
Right? And because of that, it kind of bothers me, especially if you take it outside of the framework of productivity and achievement.
Yeah.
Just being the fullness of who you are.
Yeah. Those being like the self-work and care that we see, like say like on social media is the ways in which we as humans try and make that inner work tangible.
Right. Exactly.
So-
When it's really, at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's not about your morning routine and your self-care and the amount of water you drink and like being productive and being healthy and doing every little thing that is like the thing that you should be doing according to some arbitrary metric of like what you're supposed to be doing. And that's a little like, I don't like it because I wish it was that.
Yeah.
Because if it was that, then like it's something you can measure and you can base your life against.
Right.
Whereas this intangible fulfillment of your truest self, like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah.
Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. But in the lack of tangible meaning is where the entire beauty of the concept becomes.
Yeah.
So it really is what you take of it. And living life and experiencing things is where like I want to take my life, but I can't separate it from the metric of achievement and doing XYZ, which I think is very, very interesting because it's not a philosophical issue.
Yeah.
You're not achieving enlightenment, even though actualization and enlightenment are used interchangeably. Like, they're not the same thing.
Right.
Like,
Right.
enlightenment is the pinnacle of human existence. God level, basically. You know, the Buddha was enlightened.
Right.
Like, the Buddha is at the end of the universe. Like, homie's enlightened. Versus like just being actualized just is being as yourself as you can be.
Yeah.
Be as you can be.
Yeah.
Who are you? That's a hard question to answer.
Oh. Yeah.
But it's the only question that matters as far as actualization. So, and because of like that can change, then who you are when you start like said relationship is perfectly valid to who you become during the relationship. And if that relationship ends,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So were we wrong? I want to say no because like we were grasping at an idea that I still believe.
Yeah.
Like you need certain qualities to be productive in relationships. Actualization might not be one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can agree with that
Or-
statement.
I can't judge what actualization is for you.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
That being said, if you want to be actualized, the way that we want you
are
to,
selling a book.
actually, a little ebook. Hey, yo, we could totally make that. Though.
Selling
That's
for
crazy.
$50.
50. Yeah.
Should we sell it for more?
I would say $5, but
No,
go.
that's what I'm saying. We're trying to exploit this idea.
Oh, I see. Like if you want to be like, yeah, $100 if you want to be actualized.
Go to our link tree.
Right. Access the ebook, the free ebook plus the $150 course of actualization.
Horrible.
Oh man, we should
Horrible.
actually do that though. That shit's how people
No,
make
Jesus
money.
Christ.
See, that's what I mean. I wish I was more diabolical.
Yeah.
That's the diabolical thing I was talking about. Because somebody has that right now.
Right.
Somebody started a cult talking about twin flames over here, you know? And I'm over here. No, I don't want to like stress people out, you know, like people don't have that type of money.
Right. Well, not even that. It's like, oh, like who am I to like make
like,
someone
what
pay for
value
this?
am I providing that people have to see? People don't care. People don't even have to provide value. They just are selling shit. God damn. But that being said, if you want to improve and grow along the lines that I and Renee both believe that you should be, this is how you do it. A list of 4 little things. Where
it begins.
Yeah, this is how you start it, I should say. Jeez, so politically correct all the time. And it starts first and foremost with deciding that that's a thing that you want to do. Because if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And yesterday I would not have said that. But today I'm saying it.
Growth.
Sure. Let's call that what it is.
Yeah. No, but agreed. Setting the intention is the first and foremost.
Yeah. And if you want to live your life in a very productive manner and have like a metric of success and climb the ladder and have your little morning routine and optimize all the 4 quadrants of your life, like do
By
that.
all means.
Do that. But if you, never mind. It's I've said the point like 7 times already.
Right.
Second aspect is to start questioning everything.
Yeah.
Ask why 5 times for every idea. You'll get to the core root of most things. It's true. I've done it. I've done
You've
it many times.
tested this theory.
Like why? Why is that?
Just act like a 3-year-old
Like
who's
a
just
3-year-old.
learning about
Yeah.
all the things. But why, Mom? But why? Because I said so.
But because she said so is not a useful answer. You have to ask why you say so.
Right.
That's the 3rd time. The 4th time, you see, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
See, now we're actually getting somewhere.
Very true.
The critical thinking that is required to be what you need to be. What else? Number 3, this relationship between thoughts and behaviors.
There's a balance of like thinking and doing. That
I'm extremely cerebral.
I'm a big doer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we both can stand to do the other a little more.
Yeah.
I could do more.
Yeah.
I could definitely do more.
It's like intellectualizing and just pondering on the things that, oh, yes, I could be.
I'll tell you this, but if you get good enough at intellectualizing your life, the things that you like think about are accurate.
Yeah.
So if you were to do them, they would follow exactly how you predict them to, which is where you get caught.
Right.
Because
I was gonna say,
that's not how things always operate. And I'm very comfortable in understanding how things go. It's like I know it's going to end up that way. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You might be surprised.
Yeah. No, it is very funny because Matt's also a very big thinker, and he, it kind of in that same vein, will like think through like a concept so like hardcore and through every aspect of it that he feels as if he has learned the lesson without ever doing anything besides.
The mind is a very powerful thing you don't understand.
Yeah.
It starts with the mind first. Athletes that visualize lifting weights for an hour a day without touching a gym, the moment they work out, have a 25% increase in muscle mass.
Oh, wow.
The mind is powerful, but
the mind is powerful.
It's not a replacement for actual
action.
participation.
Yeah, participation.
You have to participate in your reality for it to actually be valid.
Yeah.
Because like, you can think and predict and hypothesize till
all
you
you
die,
want.
but it'll never be real until you test it. And the testing is very necessary.
Yeah.
Keep that same energy.
Me?
Yeah.
Of doing?
No, of of doing.
Okay.
For me specifically.
Got you.
Keep that same energy.
I will. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. All right, what's the fourth one?
Let's find out. Drum roll, please. Thank you actually for participating. Like, oh my God.
Like, I wonder if the mic is picking up on that.
You're so... Anyways, read more, journal even more.
Yeah.
And just be generally curious about life. Don't like the moment something happens to trigger your emotions, instead of like reacting to it, like just be like interested, like why you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
And then journal it out. Don't try to think about these things and reach these conclusions in your brain. I like to think of myself as a highly intelligent individual, and I can't do that shit. My brain won't let me.
But the thoughts bombard you.
Right, yeah, no, I start getting overwhelmed by all my lofty ideals.
Right.
But the moment I put that on paper,
yeah.
it's like a completely beautiful, organized structure.
Yeah.
A castle, if you will. A mind palace, if you may.
Oh.
Yes, quite. So journal, very useful. Reading so you can understand different perspectives. Like, I mean, I've read these books and I still didn't reach the conclusion that I reached today when I actually had to talk to other people about actualization. So you realize the things that you understand. Oh, that's what I wanted to say towards your thing that I forgot.
Oh.
You reach, like, talking to other people is really important because in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
Because you can internalize all the ideas you want in your head, but they don't necessarily make sense until you speak them out loud. And very quickly you'll find out if it's like an idea that has value.
Yeah.
You have to speak it out. Because if it doesn't, then people will qualify and question it. And then you can slowly like, well, that's not really what I meant. Let me say it like this. Then you'll find the language to actually articulate what you want.
Right. Which helps you understand yourself more, for sure. Learning how to like convey your thoughts and opinions and whatnot.
And if people don't understand what you're saying, it doesn't mean your idea is wrong. It means you're not explaining it effectively.
Yeah.
So
but sometimes it's wrong.
I mean,
I'm kind of joking.
That's people. That's when people disagree.
Yeah, right.
That's when people disagree.
True.
If they don't understand, like who knows what's wrong with that?
Right. This is very true.
It's hard to say per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it means to be self-actualized and live your life the way you want to live your life. Don't let me judge you. If you want to chill and watch TV all day and play video games, I'm no longer going to ridicule you for that.
Yeah.
That's a valid way of existing.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but it's valid.
But it's valid. This is big.
Yeah.
That's
right.
big. That's really big for you, Jem.
That's huge for me specifically. And I can't believe I was interacting with these things for like the last 8 years, and I've only reached that now. And let that be a lesson to all of you. I have a whole ass podcast explaining intellectual ideas, and I just realized something so simple.
Yeah, it always continues.
The process of
ever
actualization.
Evolving.
So now we have to figure out something new to say when we say like the self-actualized person.
Yeah.
Like maybe we'll never say that again. I don't know. I don't know.
It'll be a hard habit to break for sure.
Right. Because like I know what I mean when I say that.
Yeah.
But like what I say is not what I mean.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
But that's it for this conversation, guys. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed us critiquing our own selves and qualifying our own meanings and intentions when we use words that we have not the authority to really articulate.
Yeah. I agree.
That's it? That's all you have to, that's all you're okay. For
sure.
I
don't know. Like I don't really like have much like conclusions beyond that
I don't really have much, but like
I don't know why I'm like blanking on like having a conclusion, but I think it will be cool for us to maybe like in the thread of like books and ways to like be curious and like engage in like the thought and discourse around like inner work and whatnot, and maybe we can put up some like like I'll grab some ideas from you or just find books that people are reading that are kind of on the same vein that are really helpful and whatnot. And
so now like our podcast becomes one, a way for us to actualize and then spread the wealth in a way.
Books that helped us to like, come to these ideas. I'll put it on our Instagram I'll put it like on a highlight. I'll post it on our Instagram story and post a highlight of it. So if you guys are interested in that, then you can find that there.
Let us know what you thought of the episode. What is the fulfillment of you being you at this moment in time? That's what I'm curious about. What does it mean for you to be you?
Yeah.
And do you consider yourself actualized? But yeah, that's all we have to say about it.
Yeah, that's all I have to say as well. Oh.
There you go. We got
it. Like and follow us on all of our social medias. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We don't have a Twitter. Facebook. There we go. I always forget Facebook. But yeah.
We're finally going to start posting again. I rectified our data situation.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a technical issue these past couple weeks.
But the show must go on.
Yes.
And go on it shall.
Yeah.
So thanks guys for tuning in. And at the end of the day, I'm Jem.
And I'm Renee.
And we're the Intellectuals. Signing off until next time.
Bye.